Welcome to Create Wealth Through Franchising. I'm your host, Kim Daly. Whether you're a CEO, a military vet, a real estate investor, or simply in career transition and ready to take ownership of your future, with each episode, you're going to learn valuable insights and hear inspiring stories from within the franchise industry. On that note, my guest stories are their own. And as a franchise consultant, I do not make personal brand endorsements or earnings claims, but I do educate, motivate, and inspire dreams. Now, on to the show. Welcome back to Create Wealth Through Franchising Podcast and Kim Daly TV. Our special guest with us today, his name is Brad, and he lives in Delaware. We don't know anything about Delaware. That's what we agreed before we hit record. And he is a franchisee of a company called Mosquito Shield. Brad, welcome to the studio of Kim Daly TV.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
We are excited to talk to you today because we're going to dive into this very elusive definition of semi-absentee ownership in franchising. Brad has a story, but before we start talking about semi-absentee ownership, Brad, why don't we get the followers of Kim Daly into your story? So tell us a little bit about what you were doing when you started thinking, I need to do something different, and you started thinking about a franchise.
Yeah, so my story really quickly is I've been in the corporate world for close to 20 years, been in the insurance world, been a typical W-2 employee, right? Working for a giant conglomerate of a company, making, I laugh, 30 cents on a dollar and saying, that's funny when you do all the work and, you make 30 cents on a dollar. Where's all this money going to? And, that really kind of led, my wife had been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. It was a decision that we were able to make. We don't regret it. But when we were starting to look at, okay, our youngest kid has gotten to school age, she said, hey, I'm ready to start to have adult conversations, right? All that fun stuff that, we get when moms, if you've been a stay-at-home mom, like, please just let me talk to adults. And we kind of were having an honest conversation to say, what does going back to work look like for you, Christy? And when you really drilled it down, it was kind of looking at, well, you're kind of starting over in a career. You've been out of it for 10 years. Maybe you're going to make $40,000 to $50,000, kind of reinventing yourself starting out, 2 weeks vacation. And when we really kind of whiteboarded everything out, we kind of said, hey, we may actually be going backwards when you start to add summer camps and, struggling to go on vacation and syncing it with, well, I don't have any time off and all that stuff. And we kind of really said, hey, if we're being honest, we're in our early 40s at the time, maybe this is the time now where we should start a sub business on the side and really kind of see what's out there. And then we kind of said, well, what should we do? And we said, well, I have no idea. We don't know what we want to do. We have no passion about anything. We didn't know business. And then that led to kind of, well, what is franchise looking like? And, then we kind of educated ourselves and went down that rabbit hole. In all honesty, and I think a lot of people are like me, the traditional, I had always thought franchising was the Chick-fil-A model, right? You needed $3, $4, $5 million of cash to even get a franchise off the ground. Had no idea that these were their, smaller, maybe upcoming businesses that you could really be on the forefront and the groundbreaking opportunity, and when you started to dive in more about that and kind of say, oh, the amount of cash really we don't need and the pros of turnkey solutions and finding a business that, we're passionate or checks the boxes, that's what really kind of led us down to the franchising. And again, when we evaluated all those kind of the pros, we were like, franchising is definitely the way we want to go. And we locked into Mosquito Shield very quickly. And here we are 2 years later. And we've learned a lot. We've grown a lot. This was our first opportunity into small business ownership. But, it's something as you see the build and you see your guys building that up, it's you get so much more pride and enjoyment out of it.
Super fantastic setup. And we're not just going to skate by, oh, we landed on Mosquito Shield very quickly. So let's rewind the tape because this is not the obvious low-hanging fruit on the tree, Brad. Let's be real. Nobody ever said, oh, yeah, Kim, I think I want to be in pest control. So yeah, let's back up. Were you working with a consultant? How did you even learn about Mosquito Shield?
Yeah, I had honestly answered inquiry through Franchise Fastlane, okay. Where they kind of have 15 to 20 franchises available to them to be able to look at. So I spent some times with, my representative, Ross, and really kind of said, hey, dude, I have no idea if this is going to go anywhere. I don't know anything about franchise, but, the beauty about working with somebody like that is if you find the right person, right? Yes, do they want to make a sale down the ride? But at the end of the day, they're all about education. And even if you spend 30 minutes and said, hey, I'm good, but I don't think this is going to be right. right? But, we never felt pressured. We were able to evaluate, 15 to 20 companies pretty quickly just to say, hey, does any of these companies even resonate? I do joke with my friends and family. If you had told me 2 years ago you'd be in the pest control business killing mosquitoes, I'm like, what happened or what went wrong? But, the reason it checked quite a few boxes for us, at least, again, where we live, we're in a coastal area. We've got water on one side with the ocean. We've got water on the other side with the bay. So obviously the mosquito population is never going to be an issue that we didn't have. We did not have a ton of competition when we did some of the research on that end. And then what we did see is post-COVID, right? So many folks left, DC, Baltimore, the major cities, Philadelphia, and kind of came to say, hey, I can now work from home. Why don't we live at the beach? And so you did see a massive explosion of the residential communities in our area. And we kind of said, hey, if we can get on the front of this and really kind of build this out for a couple of years, like we thought we had a great opportunity. And then selfishly, insurance-wise, I had a very good understanding of recurring revenue, right? That's what it's all about. Like the guarantee as you build that client base and the more and more clients that you build on year after year, that recurring revenue, we all know, hey, at the end of the day, it takes 100 clients to kind of run your basic operating expenses or your basic budget. But anything after that, the profit really kind of tremendously scales upwards. So I lived that model for close to 20 years on the insurance side. And I could see, oh, this model makes total sense to me to be able to build. And then, right, seasonality aspect of the business too. So my wife and I both agreed like, hey, at the end of the day, yes, we're knee deep with kids growing, but 10 years from now, it would be nice. Our kids are in college doing their own things. You work really hard for 6, 7, even maybe 8 months. But if you said, hey, you've got 2 or 3 months to do whatever the heck you want to do for the rest of those time, like to us, that was kind of the dream to say, we worked really hard. We finished the season, but now we've got, 60 to 90 days to kind of do what we want into our 50s and 60s, but still have that job or that career to kind of come back and running the business.
Hey, Daly Coach fans, if you're loving this episode, please do me a quick favor and leave me a 5-star rating and a short review. Your feedback fuels my growth and rankings and shows others that this podcast is valuable. Now, back to the show. What an amazing answer. And I was thinking, I got to ask you about the seasonality, and you went right there. It was like you were reading my mind. That's awesome. In going down this path, Brad, have you kept your W-2 and has Christy been sort of taking the reins of the business, or have you found yourselves both sort of actively engaged in ramping the business?
Yeah, so it's funny. Once I went full entrepreneur, I kind of ripped the Band-Aid off and actually decided to go out on my own on the insurance side as well. And then we're actually dabbling into getting into another franchise as well. So we were kind of fully like, we're going for it, on that end. But initially, yeah, the beauty of at least my side on the insurance side, I've traditionally managed a book of business, right? I control my day-to-day operations. So, I've had the flexibility to say, hey, at the end of the day, I've got to get these tasks done for my primary W-2 job, right? But it's an office setting. I'm a big believer is, hey, at the end of the day, I wake up early. So, I can control my destiny. If I've got to wake up at 5 a.m. to do an hour of mosquitoes, go through my day and then come back and do a couple things, or even throughout the day, if there's smaller tasks that we have to do. Christy and I really broke it up. Our understanding was, she was going to be pretty much full time into the business, right? She was going to, other than managing the kids and the school and all that stuff, but she was going to be handling a lot of the day-to-day operations. So she's been, I joke, she's been our 6th quarter running, salesman of the quarter. She's been doing a lot of the client interactions. So setting up and interacting, we do a ton of text messages through the clients on the day to day. I've been doing more of the stuff where setting up some of the financial stuff, right? Developing the marketing. Hey, how much do we want to spend? Where do we want to spend it? Doing that behind the scenes, doing some of the tech work, obviously. So it's really kind of a total team effort on that end.
So Mosquito Shield sort of says to us consultants, this is a general manager, semi-absentee run business. So let's dive into the crux of this conversation, Brad, because, I have a lot of videos on Kim Daly TV that talk about, like I said in the beginning, this elusive definition of semi-absentee. What does that actually mean? I have come to believe after 21 years of, being around thousands of franchise opportunities and watching lots and lots of people go on to build semi-absentee businesses that the definition is very subjective to each owner. So what does semi-absentee mean for you, if anything? Did it mean anything in the beginning? And maybe what do you see it meaning to you now that you're, a couple of years into your ramp up?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the key is subjective for sure, right? Like you said, I think literally every single person's definition of semi-absenteeism could be 0 hours to, oh, I'm only in it 30 hours a week, right? And, we've all had those people that micromanaged us and yet they felt they weren't in all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think everybody has to have a true understanding of what does that definition look like for them, the semi-absenteeism. I always joke that, hey, at the end of the day, if we could all get into a business and work 5 hours a week and run a successful business, then we'd all be in franchise, right? We'd all be Mosquito Shield owners. So, we got to caution that. I also think too, what is the career that you are currently in, right? So for me, being in the insurance world, I have a client base. I control and set my own schedule. I've got the freedom and flexibility to be able to do that versus, let's say, a lawyer or a doctor that, is in surgery, right? Or they're in meeting patients all day and they can't pull away, even if it's just for a 5-minute call, right? Hey, this equipment broke down, not sure what to do. Okay, let me take care of that real quick and answer that question. They don't have the ability to be able to do that, to be able to run that day-to-day operation. But, the stuff that I thought has been invaluable for me is I spent a lot of time in year 1 and year 2 being the actual tech, right? So going out, meeting the clients, learning the business about the products that we're putting down, how to, I've always been in sales, right? So I think I'm pretty good at talking to people and, talking to them about the services that we're providing and how can we help? How's everything working? That kind of stuff. But seeing the day-to-day grind of what is a tech going to go through, like to spray, upwards of 30, 35 houses a day, in 90-degree heat. What does that day look like? How exhausted are we? I joke with my wife, there's some days, I did that and I would come home and be at 5:30. She'd be like, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to bed. And, I think it's invaluable to be able to see, as future years grow, you can relate or be able to have the conversations with those techs that you hired of, hey, I know what you're going through. We're in the heat of summer. I know how hot it is. Are you doing everything you can to water yourself? If you need a break, because I've been there and I do think that was invaluable for me, that as we grow, I had that flexibility to be able to do that, but I do think in terms of, semi-absenteeism, the goal is to, yes, in a perfect world, how fast can we ratchet it up to where we're building the infrastructure? We've got the middle management maybe in line in terms of the general manager in place. How fast can we build it up to get it to that? Does it take 2 years, 5 years, or 8 years? And I do think the more and more that you are involved on that first, let's call it 6 months, to 18 months to 2 years, I just think that moves that timeline so much faster, the more hours that you can spend in it. Yeah, again, at the end of the day, do what I love to 5 years from now, come back on this and say, Kim, we finally made it. Christy and I are, loving life. We're making a great amount of money and we're not really working hard. Now, she will tell you, I'm not wired like that. There's no way that I'll go on to the next thing because I'll be bored to be able to do that. But I think that's a goal. But I think in order to define that, the amount of work and time that effort that we put in the first couple of years will get us there that much faster rather than, let's say, year 10 that it takes maybe some owners that weren't putting in the full amount of time on that initial end.
Okay, great. I mean, I love that, going back to so your insurance, which is long-term sustainable and reoccurring, and look, Mosquito's long-term sustainable and reoccurring. There's some synergy there. And I think that, listening to you talk about how you chose to get out there and be the sprayer, that was important to you as an owner, right? And I think that you're right. That kind of makes you that servant leader because you can say to your employees, I'm not asking you to go do a job that I haven't done, right? I think that is invaluable. And I also think that if I have to summarize everything that you're saying, because you've learned in the trenches, I think that shortens the learning curve, which is what you're saying, right? And that's what helps you kind of get to the next level of growth. People think, oh, well, how quickly can I make $1 million? They're looking at earnings claims. And I'm always like, what does an earnings claim tell you about how quickly you can make $1 million? Because we don't know how you're going to show up. We don't know the learning curve that you have to go through so that you become the owner worthy of making $1 million, right? Because the $1 million just doesn't magically show up. It shows up because you're the owner who gave enough that the service worthy of $1 million of return. And so I think that in listening to you, that's kind of what you're saying, right? You had to get in there for you, roll up your sleeves and be in it. And because you were willing to do that work on the ground floor, it advanced your learning and helped you become that owner to where now you can see that there's a path forward where you've got the structure in place, you've got the education, you know what you're doing. And so now it's easier to step back. Is that a good summary of what you just said?
Yeah, I think so. So now it's, maximizing your time, right? And what you're good at, right? As my wife will always say, well, you're going to be and I joke, right? I said, I'm going to be the best sprayer our company probably ever has. No offense to any future hires that we hire. If you're listening to this years from now and you're like, hey, I'm the sprayer for Brad. I'm the lead tech. But, at the end of the day, when it is your business, right? And your name is on it, you're going to care the most. And am I going to give the extra attention or not rush through a spray because I've got something to do that evening? Absolutely. But then you also realize on the owner side, right? My strengths have to be put to better use where, hey, at the end of the day, as we grow and scale this thing up, because that's what it's all about, I can't be spending the time doing 30, 40 hours of spraying into the field because at the end of the day, my strengths have to be better put towards growing that top line revenue that we talked about, adding additional trucks, marketing to get more sales into the community and all that kind of stuff. So, again, it's now I'm struggling with all right, now to where do we have to kind of say, okay, you did that, which was a great experience, right? But you can't just sit there, right? And say, well, I'm just going to be the one-man warrior. I'm going to be the tech because at the end of the day, you're not going to scale up and grow accordingly on that end.
Hey, Daly Coach fans, if you're ready to begin your own journey to find the perfect franchise, please email me right now at inquire@kimdaly.tv. My services are totally free for you. That's inquire@kimdaly.tv. Now, back to the show. So you left your W-2 and you went like as an independent insurance agent. Is that what you were saying? So you were literally starting two businesses at the same time?
Yes, correct. So again, as my wife would say, you don't know how to relax and not be busy. So yes, at the end of the day, I kind of look at it and go backwards to say, hey, I'm 44. I actually wish I did this 10 years ago, right? Rip the Band-Aid. But we all know, right? Hey, once you start to have kids and you build your career and you start to make a certain income level, right? Somebody always had a great analogy. You always turn that next valve on, right? So with the money, no matter how much more money you're making, you just add another valve, whether it's a second car or a boat club or a, whatever, kids tuition, right? 529 accounts. At the end of the day, you kind of ratchet that up. So, the unfortunate thing about sometimes I feel people, the safe route is to, sit in that career, put your 20 or 30 years in, but I realize I have more entrepreneurial blood in my family or in myself than I actually had. And I really wish I would have done this years ago. When I first graduated college, my mom said, hey, you lose health insurance at the end of this month and you need benefits. And so you better go get a job. And what I really should have said is, that's great, Mom, but I can always go get a job 6 months from now, 12 months from now. But if there is something that maybe I'm passionate about, I should actually try to probably build that right now, right? I can go wait tables. I don't have families, don't have any true obligations. I can, wait tables, like I said, bartend at night to make some cash. But hey, if there is something you're passionate about when you're young and before you have a lot of those, the time is now to build that out. Take that 1 or 2 years where maybe you're not making the revenue, but build it then, because you'll see, when you control your own destiny and the freedom, because when you do start to have friends or family and stuff, you truly want to be in control of that schedule where you're not missing out on any kids' activities. Because at the end of the day, Kim, I don't know, I'm sure you've been in the corporate world as well. At the end of the day, these companies, I've had, my share of it, and maybe I'm in my mid 40s, but once you're gone, right? They don't necessarily care, right? Somebody always had a good analogy that if you were to die today, your job requisition would be in the paper before your obituary. So, at the end of the day, these companies, I do wish I took more maybe vacation time. I was always the guy that still worked for vacation. And now I've kind of said, listen, I'm in control of total destiny. Yes. Is it nerve-wracking some days? Is it stressful because, hey, when you're all out on your own, you can only really look at the mirror. But, as you see the builds of these different companies and these entities, you kind of realize, hey, I'm hardworking. I know I'm going to be successful. And 2, 3, 4 years from now, I'm going to say this was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, taking control.
So was this the greatest thing that's ever happened to you, taking control, Brad?
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't, my wife would tell you that too. I mean, we wouldn't look back. We've had so much fun. We've learned so much just in business operating, and leaning on the corporate folks. The Mosquito Shield have been awesome to kind of teach you what you don't know, kind of coming out of the gate, how to be successful. Networking with peers has been instrumental. If there's one thing I could always harp on any franchise owners that are listening to this is get with your peer groups, right? Get with a small group of 3 or 4 other owners in your area that that own the same franchise that you get, have scheduled weekly or bi-weekly calls just to connect on what's working, what's not working, right? The real, as we say, the real conversations, right? But, that's my biggest takeaway to franchise. Find that small group, build your own team out that way, because it's so invaluable learning, what's working, what's not working from those other owners.
Yeah, the accountability that is available, not just what's working and what's not working, but having these other people. When you hear like that, oh, you think the economy is driving your business down, and then you talk to your neighbors and the economy is not driving their business down, right? And so you kind of have to like own your own, and be accountable. And so these accountability groups, as we call them in my franchise, are invaluable, especially when you're young and you're growing and you're still trying to work it all out. It's so great, everything you're saying. And I love that, you're like, yeah, start when you're young. But you know what? Hindsight is always 20/20. That's why you're saying that.
Yeah.
So for those people who are out there that are incredibly inspired, like I am, by this guy, Brad, and his energy and his vision and what he's doing, that I want to be your daily coach. And it's not too late to start, because you're here now. And if you don't start now, 10 years from now, you're going to look back and go, man, I thought 44 was old, but now I'm 54 and now it's even riskier. So the older we get, the less risks we can afford to take, because we have less time to come back if it doesn't work or if it's harder than we thought. And so today's the day. It's the day to start. And if you are inspired, please know that I want to be your daily coach. Please follow the email on the screen right now, or reach directly out to me at inquire@kimdaly.tv. That's inquire@kimdaly.tv. Brad, you have been an amazing inspiration, a wealth of knowledge. There was like a million truth bombs. I did not interrupt you. Normally, I like to interrupt. I did not interrupt you because you were just preaching it and I was enjoying it. So thank you so much for being my special guest here today on Kim Daly TV.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate you so much. Until next time, my name is Kim Daly, and I want to be your daily coach. You can find more content just like this on my YouTube channel at kimdaly.tv. And if you're inspired to take the next step to explore franchises matched to you, please email me right now at inquire@kimdaly.tv. That's inquire@kimdaly.tv.